Hey, Aviation for Girls crew. We're here for another Engage E-Learning, and we have two amazing guest specialists with us. While you are joining, we are going to launch our first poll, which is, have you seen an airship such as the Goodyear blimp or the Minion blimp in flight? Andrea, you had some other blimps that you were mentioning. Do you want to just talk about some of the really cool blimps while I get the poll launched?
Yeah, that sounds great, Annie. There are a lot of really cool looking blimps out there if you want to search around to find them. There was recently one that looked like a shark. So the whole airship looked like a big shark. I remember when I was a kid, there was a Shamu blimp that I really liked. And then I'll be showing a lot of photographs of more blimps as well.
Awesome. Well, if you have seen an airship in the sky, you can go ahead and put that in the Q&A. I will say I lived near Fenway Park, if you have heard of that. And when it was baseball season, I could navigate home anywhere in Boston, Massachusetts, by looking for that Goodyear blimp in the sky. So it was certainly a beacon, when there was a sporting event going on. All right, so our customs, as usual, respecting everyone. We are recording this session. Please use the Q&A. You can use the Q&A if you have a question, or you can use the Q&A if you want to say something to one of our specialists or myself. Please raise your hand. You also can do that to ask a question live, and we love reactions. So if you're excited about something or if something's really interesting, go ahead and show us some of those reactions. Most important, though, we're here to have fun and enjoy the time together. So we have our introductions. Our guest specialist, Jenny, is going to start us off. I'm going to do a quick airship activity with you. Then our guest specialist, Andrea, is going to teach us about her expertise. And before we close, I do have an opportunity to share the Endeavor Scholarship, and we'll wrap it up. So please welcome our two amazing specialists. We have Andrea Deyling. She is an entrepreneur, an airship pilot, and Jennie Kinney. She is our supply chain director at Goodyear. And with us, we have myself. I'm the manager of youth programs, and Kelly Murphy, director of communications with WAI. All right. And Jenny, do you want to start us off? Tell us about what it's like at Goodyear.
Sure. Thank you, Annie, and thank you for having me today. I'm very happy to be here with everybody and sharing my experience with Goodyear and with the aviation industry, and hope to impart some a few words of wisdom onto the youth, and just share with you some thoughts that we put together. So, if you want to go ahead to the next slide. So I'll share about myself and what led me to my current position in global aviation at Goodyear. I'll share a little bit of facts, well, probably a few facts on Goodyear as an entity, so the entire Goodyear and Tire and Rubber Company. And then we have an exciting 100-year anniversary of the Goodyear blimp. So we'll talk about some opportunities with the blimp this year. And then I have some just high-level statistics and fun facts on the aviation industry. And I'll wrap it up with our organizational structure that supports Goodyear Aviation. So first, I am a mom of two. So I have a 20-year-old son, Darren, he's on the right, and then an 18-year-old daughter. So I am now the mom of two adults, which is kind of crazy. Brianna had her birthday in December. And I am very excited to announce that Darren is doing his bachelor's degree at the University of Akron, where I actually did my master's degree. And I finished it up when I was actually pregnant with him. So he had the University of Akron in his blood from the beginning. And then Brianna just committed to Miami University, where I did my bachelor's degree. And that was not because I told her she had to go there. She's had her heart set on it ever since she knew she wanted to go to college. So yeah, and then my husband there, he's on the left in the top picture and the right in the bottom picture. He went to Bowling Green State University here in Ohio as well. And the picture there in the bottom is we went to parents weekend or family weekend at the University of Akron, and Akron played Bowling Green. So the Akron mascot was not having my husband's Bowling Green shirt. So we had a lot of fun, but I had great educational opportunities. I went to public high school in Geneva, Ohio, which is east of Cleveland. It's a small town. And then I did my bachelor's in engineering at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, which is down near Cincinnati. And then upon graduating from Miami, I went to work for the Timken Bearing Company. And while I was at Timken, I had the opportunity to pursue my master's degree, my MBA, Master's of Business Administration. So, and Timken helped me fund that. So I'm a big proponent of education, whether it be formal education or just lifelong learning. While I was at Timken, I received my black belt in Lean Six Sigma. And then while I've been at Goodyear, my project management certificate. So that's the formal education block. We'll talk about my transition and my professional work experience on the next slide. But the one thing I want to point out is I am all about learning and teaching. And here I'm just, sharing the leadership trainings and different trainings I've had the opportunity to be able to be a part of. And then with competency development, just whenever you have the opportunity to learn new things, meet new people, I highly recommend it because it's a lot of what's given me my background as far as just my network of people and the things that I've learned. And it all just can weave a web of just great information and great people to take along with you on your professional journey. So that's the one big takeaway from this slide. So most recently in November, I had the opportunity to travel to Dallas in a day. So Akron, Ohio to Dallas, Texas. So that's me with the Goodyear Gulfstream private jet that the company has. So it was very exciting. I don't get to ride on the jet very often. But so we did that. We went to present to one of our airline customers, one of our new products that we're bringing out. So it was a great trip. We had business professionals, supply chain professionals, technology. So the gentlemen that have developed the tire, and we went and we shared that with them, and it was a great experience. So this slide just shows from when I graduated from Miami and worked at Timken for those 8 years. That's the orange, the Timken Bearing Company, their color is orange. I started in an analytical position simply called engineer. So working with the team in the Canton Bearing plant where we made taper roller bearings and worked my way through the organization. That's where I received my Lean Six Sigma certification, managed a team of supply chain professionals in the plant. And then I moved into the corporate headquarters where we were installing a new ERP system. I did that for a couple of years. And then project management was my last stint at Timken. And what I was telling Annie earlier today is, after 8 years at Timken, I felt like, oh no, I only know bearings. How can I transition this to something different? And I want everybody to take away from this, the activities that you do and the work that you do, there's always something, whether it be the process, the people, the systems, the materials, anything that you're working with, you can always take that knowledge and apply it in a different industry, a different company with a different product. So I was able to take those 8 very solid and educational and informative years at Timken to Goodyear. So I started with Goodyear in supply chain in 2009. So it says they're NA consumer tires. So what does that mean? North America. And then consumer is just a fancy way to say car tires. So I started working with the team that scheduled the plants that make the car tires at Goodyear. Did that for a couple years, and then I had the opportunity to join the business analytics team, where we not only forecast the Goodyear tire demand, but the entire tire industry. So we actually have a team of professionals at Goodyear that looks at the entire tire industry and generates an industry forecast. So I was part of that team for a couple years. And then I had the amazing opportunity to join our Innovation Center Manufacturing and become the materials manager for the team that makes all of the NASCAR tires. So we make 100% of the NASCAR tires here in Akron, Ohio. And it was 4 years of just exhilarating learning and meeting people. I got to go to the Daytona 500 as my first NASCAR race. So that was amazing. And then a handful of other races after that. And I had the opportunity to take my family to a race, and we met Danica Patrick and presented her with a tire that had her name on it. So my 4 years in ICM were a great experience. And there I was telling Annie that I was really hands-on and learned all of the components and all of the materials that go into a tire. And a lot of people think that tires are just, you take rubber, you make it liquid, you put it in a curing press or an oven, and you cook it, and out comes a tire. But that's not the case. Tires have rubber components, they have powder components, they have liquid chemicals, fabric. Some people are very surprised by that, but nylon and Teflon are fabrics that we put into our tires. And then metal as well. So there's steel belts that go into car tires and semi-truck tires. And then there's also metal that goes into the round edges of the tire that seal it to the wheel. Those are called beads. Each tire has one on each side. So a lot of different components, but we have machines where really smart and strong people work at these machines, and they bring all those components together. Some tires can have 27 to 30 components that go into that tire. And then they finally go to the oven that cooks them, which is called a cure press. So it's almost like baking a cake or making cookies. We actually did some simulations, but you have a whole bunch of ingredients. You mix them all together, you put them into a certain configuration, and then you cook them. And then at very high temperatures, very high steam, and then
How
out comes a
many,
tire.
how many tires do you estimate that Goodyear produces in a year based on, your previous role and this role and all the aviation and the race car tires?
Oh, it's millions. It's millions. Goodyear makes millions. We've got that, I think, on one of these. The next slide, I think, has the millions of tires. But yeah, let's talk about this with Goodyear. So after my stint in ICM and learning how tires are made, my skills were very transferable to the aviation industry and the aviation group, because believe it or not, NASCAR tires and race tires are made very similarly to aviation tires. So it's great. Now the big difference is aviation tires need to last a long time and hold up to very intense pressures when the planes land and when they take off. Whereas NASCAR tires, those are designed to wear out pretty quickly to make the race more interesting. But aviation tires are very strong, very durable, and they use a lot of similar components and materials that the NASCAR tires do. Here you can see some of the high level numbers of Goodyear across the globe. So we have been in business for, I think this year it's 127 years. We have 71,000 team members across the globe with 13,000 retail locations. We have an innovation center here in Akron, Ohio, and one in Luxembourg. And then you can see our patents. Unfortunately, I don't have a patent, but we have over 900 patents pending, and associates at Goodyear over the last 125 years have earned 5,800 patents. We operate in 54 different manufacturing facilities across the globe in 21 countries. So the Goodyear footprint is very vast, and we'll see that here on the next one. The millions of tires is listed here. So we have the sales, so the Americas there, you can see in the millions. We have locations across the United States, in Canada and Mexico, in Brazil, in Europe, in Africa, in Asia. And the aviation tires that my team works with and schedules are made in Danville, Virginia. So very close to the Goodyear emblem there on the United States. And then we also make tires in Bangkok, Thailand. So I have the privilege of working with a team of very talented individuals in Bangkok. Means I have to get up early in the morning. I have quite a few meetings at 6 and 6:30 in the morning, but it's definitely worth it. And the team in Bangkok is amazing to work with. We also do what we call retreading of commercial airline tires. So we take the carcass of the tire and then we put it through a process, clean it all up, and then we put a new outer layer on it. And we do that in 2 locations in the United States, one in Brazil, one in Europe, and then also in Thailand. So, so we make new tires, and we also have a sustainable component where we can take some of those casings and use them up to 10 times. So some of our tires are just that robust that we can just keep reusing the carcass piece. Some of them not as much, but I mean, it spans the gamut, whether we can retread it once or up to 10 or more times.
Amazing. So is there a system where the people can recycle those tires, or companies recycle the tires?
Yes, there are different vendors that take tires and turn them into, various different applications. And we are very much a proponent of it. We want to reuse as much as we possibly can and extract, anything that can be put into a new application, because Goodyear is very serious about our sustainability policies. And working with our environmental team, there are a lot of initiatives happening to make sure that we protect the environment as much as possible. So here's an exciting thing, and Andrea can help me with this slide as well. But so the Goodyear blimp is 100 years old this year. June 3rd will mark the inaugural flight, so I'll call it the blimp's birthday. I had the opportunity to ride in the blimp a couple years ago. So the picture in the top corner is my husband and I. We were so excited. And the picture on the bottom of the slide is just Akron, Ohio, from the blimp perspective. But it was such a great experience. We got to look down and see the things that we drive by on a daily basis, but now we were floating over them. And Andrea knows so much more about airships that I'm going to let her speak to all of that. But definitely follow the Goodyear blimp on social media this year. There are going to be contests. It's very difficult to get a ride in the blimp. I had to work for Goodyear for 13 years before I got in. So definitely, if there are any contests or opportunities on social media, I would suggest to enter them. We have a blimp in Akron, one in California, and one in Florida. And then we also have an airship presence in Europe as well. We have 10 blimp pilots, and they are all very talented. It takes a very special set of skills to operate the blimps. So,
And
Andrea, I don't know if you have any other fun
well, we
facts
did
or.
have a question,
Oh,
and
okay.
you both could maybe answer. Maybe if Jennie, you want to answer first, how maneuverable is an airship? So if Jennie, you want to answer thinking back to your blimp ride, um, does it compare to an airplane? And then Andrea, if you wouldn't mind sharing like the what it's like maneuvering it as a pilot, that would be an awesome way to answer this question.
So it's definitely not as fast as an airplane. It's definitely takes a much slower speed, but you just feel like you're floating. I mean, and then as far as maneuverability, I don't think it can do sharp turns without being uncomfortable, but I'm going to let Andrea speak to all the technical stuff. But it was just a surreal experience to be up there. It was great.
Yes, I agree with how it feels like you're floating. And a lot of people say that it's a really enjoyable way to fly. A lot of people that don't like flying in small airplanes love flying in the airships. It is less maneuverable. It feels more like being on a ship in the water than being in an airplane. So the feel of flying in it and also controlling it. Sometimes, like if I want to turn left, I put in the control to turn left, but it might be a few seconds before the airship actually starts to turn left. So you have to stay on top of anticipating everything ahead of time as you're flying the airship. That's a really good question.
Thank you so much for answering. Yeah, that was from Emily. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Emily.
And then I had another question for you, Jennie, and maybe Andrea both, in terms of the airships and the tires. I know earlier when Jennie and I talked, it had not occurred to me that airships had tires. In my mind, I was thinking that airships were similar to hot air balloons in that lighter than air category. So how many tires are on an airship? That would be my question.
I should have looked that up. Is it four, Andrea? I'm thinking it's four.
Well, different airships have different number of tires. Some of them just have one
Fine.
right in the middle underneath the gondola where you sit. Some of them have three on the gondola. The Goodyear blimp has one underneath the gondola in the center, and then one way back at the back underneath the tail of the airship. So it varies by different airships. But yeah, they have tires, and the Goodyear blimp has a Goodyear made tire on it.
Yes, it does. And we just made some tires in Danville that have the 100th anniversary celebration. So if you haven't seen them yet, Andrea, you will see them soon.
Ah,
So
exciting.
we put special decals on them to commemorate the 100 years.
Oh, that's awesome. I can't wait to see them.
So yeah, so this slide just really quick. This is just the whole aviation industry globally. You could think about it in four segments. Commercial airline is what a lot of people think about when they think about aviation. Those are made by Boeing and Airbus. And then you could think about, American Airlines, United Airlines, Delta, Southwest, all of the different airlines that operate either Boeing planes or Airbus planes. And that's over half of the industry. And then another segment, business jet. So that, like the plane I showed you, when that I was able to fly in to go to Dallas, that's what a business jet looks like there. And that really grew with COVID. A lot of people started flying private, and there's actually a way now with business jets that you can have like a timeshare of a business jet. So it's called fractional business jet. So people that still have quite a bit of money, I don't have one, they can actually buy a timeshare and have a private jet available for use without buying an entire plane. Um, General aviation is a little bit less than 20% of the industry, and those are the small, think of the small weekend planes that seat, 4 to 10 people. You could even put crop dusters in there. And then military is another big part of the industry, and think Top Gun and F-15s and F-16s and various military aircraft. But this is just to give you a sampling of, you have the OE original equipment manufacturers on the left there with Boeing, Airbus, Gulfstream, Bombardier, and Embraer. And then the distributors under the general aviation, that's 3 out of dozens of distributors. And then the military, we service all branches of the military that fly airplanes, but just a sampling for everyone to have a sense of what the industry looks like and who's making the planes or selling the tires.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
And then lastly, just to wrap it up, I have a very talented team of supply chain professionals that work with me. I have a demand planner, I have supply planners, customer service, and then the distribution center, which for North America is in Stockbridge, Georgia, which is right outside of Atlanta. And we have a team there that I work with on a daily basis. And I report up through the director of supply chain for commercial and off-highway. And then she reports to the VP of supply chain for Americas. We work very closely with the sales teams. That's the dark blue piece of this. So there is a sales team in North America, Latin America, Asia, and Europe. And Europe includes the Middle East and Africa. So we have a sales office in South Africa, and then we also have sales offices in Australia. We have supply chain teams in all of the regions as well. So I work with them very closely in those early meetings or really late night meetings. And then we also, I had to stop somewhere, but we also have a very great team of finance professionals, safety professionals, quality and technology. So the list goes on and on. But this was just to give everybody an idea of some of the people on my team and the people that we work with across the globe. So that's the organization in a nutshell.
Wonderful. And Jennie, what is the favorite part about your career and what you do? And maybe we'll lean that into our poll. So if you want to share your favorite part while I launch this poll about being a supply chain director for aviation.
So what led me to my career was science and math. I knew I really enjoyed science and math and that I could use that and that it would take me places. So I was very fortunate, but I would say my very favorite part are the people and leading the team, collaborating with them, and just meeting new people and building the best team possible. I enjoy teaching, but I enjoy learning, and I think they go hand in hand. You become better at what you're doing by teaching it to others and then learning from others. I really feel strongly about the people around me and the people that I work with, not just the people that report to me, but also all of the people at Goodyear. So the teamwork and the collaboration is definitely my favorite part.
We have the results, and 100% were for the science and math skills.
All right.
But yeah, I love the leadership and teamwork's really important in all fields of aviation, right, Andrea? I think that you probably work with a team too. So, any other questions in our Q&A? I see one other question that I think we can ask Andrea in just a moment when we get there. We answered the maneuverable question. But before we start with Andrea, and she's going to help me a little bit, I thought we'd do our STEM activity right in the middle of it, and Jennie can help too, because they actually combine both things. We have a little bit of chemistry related to that supplies that we use to create the tires, and we have a little bit about gas, which is related to our airships. So if you want to get your materials ready, I am going to go ahead and share my camera. Here you go. So you should be able to see my water bottle and my balloon here. And the first thing that you want to do is go ahead and put some vinegar in the bottle with the water. You really only want to fill it up about this much, not a lot, because I will tell you this creates quite a chemical reaction. So we're just going to add, oh, just about an inch of vinegar to that water bottle. And then we're going to take our baking soda and we're going to try and get this in the balloon. So you might be thinking, okay, how are you going to do that? So very simple. If you have a funnel, that might work better. But you can take just a piece of construction paper, which is why it was on your list, and you can roll yourself a very nice little funnel to put right into the balloon. And you really just need 1 scoop or 1 tablespoon if you're using the measuring spoons of baking soda, because too much creates a really fast reaction. And you can experiment. You can try this more than once. So we're just going to add the baking soda and kind of funnel that into the balloon. So it does take a little bit of patience here. This is really the slowest part. All right. So this is going to create a chemical reaction. And does anybody know some things that happen when there is a chemical reaction? There's usually some signs that happen. If you have an idea, you can put it in the chat, or the Q&A rather. Let's see, I have some baking soda that's coming down here. Almost done. But there are some signs that happen. Jennie, we talked about baking cookies similar to the tires. And we talked about, maybe powders that you would use. Oh, I see an anonymous attendee said we might have some bubbles. Yes, sometimes when there's a chemical reaction, there are bubbles.
Yeah.
Yep. Great idea. I'm almost done.
I'm very excited to see this. I haven't seen this before, so.
Well, it will be very fast once it happens. All right, so as you can see, I have, the baking soda. You can kind of feel it. You can totally experiment with more vinegar, less baking soda. You can experiment with more baking soda, less vinegar, and try this multiple times. But here we go. You want to put this right on top. And the reason we put this in the balloon first is because you'll see how fast it happens. All right, and then I'm going to add the baking soda, and you can see it all bubbles up and the balloon expands. It's out of the screen. It has lift. Here we go. And yes, great call, bubbles. But I'll tell you what, if you do this and you feel the mixture down here, it's actually really, really cold. So sometimes when there's a chemical reaction, you will produce heat or cool, because the atoms and the molecules, they're moving around so super fast that they produce a temperature change. Sometimes there'll be a color change at a chemical reaction, or things like bubbles. All right, so to bring this one step further, we're going to put this on our side. And Andrea, you're going to help me add some of the parts of our airship to it. So can you talk me through, what do I need on the top?
What do you need on top of your airship?
Yes, at the end. What do we call that?
Well, at the tail, you need your horizontal and vertical stabilizer, just like the tail of an
Yes,
airplane. And that's where your rudder and elevator are attached.
that's right. So you can attach these yourself, and you can make them look a little bit more specific with some of the photos that we have. But here's a stabilizer, and we'll have a stabilizer down here, right? And then some of them have, I noticed three, some of them have all four. Is there a reason for that?
Just different design configurations. You'll see that with airplanes too. Some airplanes have a V-shaped tail and some are more like a cross. And that's the same with airships. So it just depends on how it was designed by the engineers.
Got it.
But it has the same function either way. And the rudder and elevator that's attached to those stabilizers will help you go up and down and turn left and right.
Excellent. So you're going to need some tape. That's why tape was on your list, because obviously these won't stick by yourself. And then if you have the paper clip, what that was for was you can pinch this and you can experiment with how fast it will launch. Are we ready? There we go. So, amazing job, everybody. I hope you had fun. And we're going to watch it one more time from Goodyear, just in case you missed it. Here we go. Awesome. So that chemical reaction, it's a process where chemicals transform. Like I said, sometimes they heat up, they move around, they rearrange. So this is actually the baking soda, and we have sodium, hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, right? And then this is our vinegar, and it turns into carbon dioxide. So that's that gas, water, which is in the bottom of our container here, and something called sodium acetate, which is basically just a salt. So that's what happens from this chemical reaction. The reason I chose this activity is because we're talking about tires, right, which have many chemical reactions, but also this created that gas of carbon dioxide, and that's how our airships fly using helium gas. So if we were going to look at the periodic table, which is how we get these elements, helium is capital H and lowercase e. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Andrea, and she can answer our questions about the airships. She's an entrepreneur with a new company called Aero-Naut.
Thanks, Kelly. That was really exciting. And hi, everyone. As Annie said, I'm Andrea and I'm an airship pilot. Why don't we go ahead and just play the video so everyone can see an airship take off? So you'll notice that the airship is not going down a runway and rolling down a runway to take off. It's lifting off more vertically, like straight up. And we're going to learn tonight how that happens. And I'm flying this airship here. I'm taking off at an airport in California. So in addition to learning how that happens, I'm also looking forward to telling you how I became an airship pilot and what it's like to fly them. And if you're interested in flying an airplane or a helicopter, what I will be talking about will apply to you as well, because most airship pilots started off flying airplanes or helicopters. And that's the case with me. I started off flying airplanes and then I transitioned to airships. And we'll also touch on a few other jobs in aviation that I've had that you maybe don't know about, and I'm excited to share with you because I think you might find them very fascinating. So as we get started, I think we should begin the discussion with all the different names for airships that are out there. And then you'll understand as these terms are used while we watch videos and get to talk with each other. So one nickname for certain types of airships is blimps. So a lot of you have probably heard of the Goodyear blimp, the most famous one in the US probably, but that is a nickname for certain types of airships. Now, if anyone's joining us from another country outside of the United States, you might know airships as dirigibles. And dirigible is another name for an airship, and it means an aircraft that is lighter than air and steerable. And we know that the airship is filled with helium, that big balloon part called the envelope, that's filled with helium, and that's what makes it lighter than air. The mast, which is the pole that's red and white that you see on the right side of the screen, that's what holds the airship on the ground and keeps it from floating away or blowing away in the wind whenever the airship is sitting outside, not in a hangar. So that it's lighter than air, and that holds it down by attaching the nose to that mast. Now, that's the lighter than air part of the dirigible definition. It's also steerable. So perhaps the next slide might show this even better. We were talking about the rudder. So on this picture at the tail of the blimp, yeah, thanks, Annie. The two white surfaces there, that is the rudder attached to the stabilizers, and that is what makes the airship turn left and right, just like an airplane or a boat even has a rudder to make it turn. Now, another name that you might hear related to airships is Zeppelins. So Zeppelin is a manufacturer of airships. It is a company that makes them. And so sometimes you might hear people refer to any airship as a Zeppelin. That's not really correct. It would be like referring to all cars as Fords. There are some cars that are made by Ford, but not all cars are. So in this instance, this Nickelodeon airship is made by Zeppelin. So it is a Zeppelin. And a lot of the Zeppelins and a lot of other newer airships have a really neat design feature. So if you see the white area under the K in the previous slide, or the A, if you go back one, under the A, you see that white area, that is the propeller. And on Zeppelins and some other newer airships, the pilot in flight can take the propeller and change it from facing forward like an airplane to pointing straight up in the air like a helicopter. And I believe that next two slides from here shows that. We might have to zoom in a little bit, but you can see that arrow is pointing to the propeller, and instead of facing forward to have the airship move forward, it's pointing up like a helicopter. And that helps us take off and land more vertically, like you saw in that Nickelodeon video where I was taking off in California. And it allows us to hover in place, like if we're over a sporting event. So those are some of the names that you'll hear for airships. And that's how we take off vertically in the Zeppelin and some of the newer airships. Some other airships, before they had the propellers that the pilot could adjust and swivel in flight, would take off. If we were lighter than air, our ground crew would just throw us up in the air and we would add power and we would take off. And if we were heavier than air, so we had so much fuel or ballast or equipment on board, we would have to roll like an airplane and roll for a little bit, not nearly as far as an airplane, to pick up some speed, and then we would take off. But now that we've gone through all that, why don't we take a look at our video of a day in the life of a blimp pilot?
We did have one question. Are
Sure.
Zeppelins made with lots of things? Or is the difference really, it's just kind of like a brand like McDonald's and Burger King of the company, or Ford and Toyota?
I missed the very beginning part of the question. What was it?
The question was the difference between the Zeppelins, that they were made with lots of things, like lots of different things, or can you specify more about the difference, which you were saying, I think, was that it's more of like a brand.
Hmm. Exactly. So Zeppelin is a brand. It's a airship manufacturer. So just like airplanes might be built by Boeing or Cessna, or a car might be built by Ford or Toyota, Zeppelin is a company that builds airships.
Perfect. All right, here we go. All right, let's see Andrea at a previous role and a current semi role, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I can see our tires on the bloom, so just saying.
Andrea, while Annie's lining that up, how many people can sit in the blimp?
It depends. Some of them only seat 3 or 4 people, where others can hold as much as 10 or 12 people. And a lot of it depends on how much helium we have in it as well. If we're taking a lot of passengers, we might have to add more helium to it to get more lift for all those passengers. Or if we're going on a long flight, we might have to carry a lot of fuel, a lot of gas for our engines. So then we'll add more helium for that as well. So part of how many people we take up depends on how many seats, but also it depends on how much lift we have from our helium.
Right. Right.
Here we go, everybody.
A day in the life of an airship pilot is always different, actually. So today we are in a different state and we are doing passenger flights. So we started in the morning and we're working kind of a 9 to 5 type job today, doing passenger flights all day. But yesterday we had a long flight down from Ohio to Maryland, just transiting, which I really enjoy. It's a beautiful way to see the country. So our schedule always varies. Sometimes it's transiting, sometimes it's sporting events, sometimes it's passenger flights or even exposure, just flying around for people to see the Goodyear sign. But it always changes, and that's one thing I really like about it, is it's never the same. I got excited about aviation at a young age. My father had been a paratrooper in the Army, and so he really enjoyed aviation. So I grew up going to air shows and air museums with him. So I went to Kent State University. They have a flight program, and that's where I did all my training, got all of my certifications, and then I instructed there to build up my flight time. But then one day I saw the Goodyear blimp flying by and got kind of curious how you become an airship pilot. I knew it was an additional rating you needed on your certificate. So I sent out my resume to the few companies and got really lucky and fortunate that one was hiring. And I thought it would just be a temporary thing, but that was 18 years ago. So I really enjoy flying the airships. It's a great view, it's a great life, it's a great aircraft to fly, and I haven't had any regrets. I haven't been on a straight path where I've only done aviation for years and years. I have taken some breaks. I've really enjoyed sailing, which is a lot like flying. The sail on a sailboat is very similar to the wing on an airplane. I was fortunate enough to sail around the world on a tall ship and spent a few years of my life sailing on tall ships. And then a dream that my mom and I had had for many years was to hike the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine. So I took a break a few years ago to walk really far and really enjoyed it. But you don't have to just choose one thing and only do that. You should be aware, especially in aviation, there are opportunities to do other things and to come and go. And as long as you keep yourself proficient and stay on top of things, you can enjoy a lot of different aspects of life. I take every opportunity I can to any children, but especially girls, to go over and talk to them when I see them at the fence or at the side of the airport watching. It's amazing how many parents, when they see me, ask, can you take a picture for me to show my daughter, or can you talk to my daughter? And I love when the girls are out at the fence just like the boys. That's how it should be.
Great, Andrea, we do have another question, which is,
Okay.
um, does the brand Zeppelin have more propellers or less propellers? Or how many propellers do, the different types of airships have?
A lot of airships have two propellers that are attached to the gondola just outside of where we sit. The Zeppelin has four propellers. The
Ah,
two on the sides that are up really high, like we saw in that Nickelodeon blimp. And then they have two propellers at the tail. And those two propellers at the tail, they can assist the rudder and elevator to help move the tail to turn left and right and to pitch the airship, the nose up and down. And that goes back to, I think, our very first question. Those propellers on the tail of the Zeppelin make the Zeppelin more maneuverable and help us to control it a lot. It's a huge advantage to an airship pilot to have that kind of controllability. And that helps us a lot during takeoff and landing and hovering over sporting events.
excellent. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So I had to include just a few of my childhood photos here. This is when I didn't know Goodyear was one word and I didn't really know how to crop the cables and wires out of photos. But whenever we would see, when I was a child and we would hear the Goodyear blimp flying overhead, we would run outside of our house and take pictures and wave to the pilots. And now I know that the pilots can see you most of the time. So if you see an airship, be sure to wave. And we do wave back too. So look at the gondola and see if you see an arm out the window waving back at you. So one thing that the video didn't really talk about is between when I was a kid and going to some air museums and getting interested in aviation, and then when I was at college. So in between there, when I was in high school, I was trying to decide what I wanted to do for a career. And I thought aviation was exciting, but I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do in it. I thought maybe it would be something interesting for me to take on as a career path. So I went to an aviation career education camp. And each day of the camp, we got to learn about a different career in education, or in aviation, excuse me. So one day we spent with an air traffic controller, another with an airport manager. And on the last day of the camp, we got to go flying in small airplanes like you see here. And that was the first time I'd ever been in an airplane. And I absolutely loved it. I remember thinking, I would get paid to do this? This is awesome. I can't believe they'd pay me. So I wanted to become an airplane pilot at that point. But myself and my family, we couldn't really afford flight lessons. So I looked into going into the military, but I didn't have the vision to pass the standards for your eyesight. I wear contacts. So I couldn't fly as a pilot in the military. So then what I ended up finding out about is that you can learn to fly at college. So there's a number of universities all around the country where you can go to college and get a 4-year degree, like a bachelor's degree, but they also have their own fleet of airplanes, or they're in their own airport, some of them, and you get your pilot licenses while you're at college. So I had good grades in high school, so I was able to get scholarships that I could use at college to cover my flight costs. And I also could get grants and student loans, and that's how I was able to afford learning how to fly and becoming a pilot. So that's a good thing to know about. I also got minors in weather and in business management. So if ever I decided that I didn't want to fly or I couldn't fly for any reason, I had other things that I could do in aviation from those minors. And the one piece of advice I would give for college too is to get involved as much as you can. Actually, even from, you're involved right now, you're here, but throughout your whole life, get involved, because it's good experiences. It's a lot of fun, and you'll make really great connections. So when I was in college, I had to work as well as go to school to make some extra money. And so I thought, well, I might as well work in something that has to do with aviation. So I worked for an airline loading baggage on airplanes. I worked as a ramp agent. But the really great thing about that is one of the pilots for the airline, he saw my aviation books one day when he was inside in our office area, and found out that I was building up all my flight hours to become an airline pilot. And when he found out I was struggling to get time in a twin engine airplane, an airplane with 2 engines, he informed me that his father needed a co-pilot and had a twin engine airplane. So then I was able to get all the flight time I needed to start interviewing with airlines. But there was a little change of plans, and that brings us to the Snoopy blimp. I decided I wanted to do something else for a couple of years, I thought at the time, something more adventurous than going straight to the airlines. So I decided that I wanted to fly airships. I saw the Goodyear blimp flying over and kind of started wondering how you become an airship pilot. And the very first airship that I was hired to fly was this Snoopy blimp. And I like this picture because it shows the perspective of how big it is compared to the people. And this is actually the smaller of all the airships you see flying these days. A lot of them are much bigger. I also like this airship because in the gondola behind the back seat, there was a painting that made it look like there were additional seats, and it was all the Peanuts characters sitting in there behind you. So it was lots of fun. I think the next slide shows the Snoopy blimp flying. There we go. And I was just going to talk you through what I did on the Snoopy blimp and a few other blimps so that you have an idea of what you do if you are a pilot of an airship. So with the Snoopy blimp, I lived on the road, and every weekend we would do a sporting event. We would fly over a sporting event. We would put a camera on the front of the gondola, and we would have a cameraman in the gondola with the pilots operating that camera. And we would fly over golf tournaments or football games or car races, all different things. And we would have to do that each weekend. We would spend the weekend between flying to the next event. And if we got there early, we got to have days off and wherever we were. But we don't deflate them and ship them. We fly them all over the country. And I really loved this, getting to fly back and forth across the country. And I traveled with the other pilots, mechanics, ground crew members, which are very important. You can't fly an airplane or an airship without ground crew members. They help take care of the airship and help with the launch and the landing of it. And then there's other positions too, like people that are in marketing that help with the airship as well. A little bit after the Snoopy blimp, I flew a blimp for a little while that was over the Gulf of Mexico. There had been an oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, and we had observers on the blimp, and they were tracking the oil spill, and they were tracking where the wildlife was moving because of that spill. You can see so well from the gondola that the blimp was the best platform to do that, and we don't really disturb the wildlife very much because we're quiet. And then a few other jobs I decided I'd like to live somewhere instead of traveling all the time. So I decided I'd live in one location and just travel part of the time with airships. So I worked flying sightseeing flight for passengers, where passengers pay to go up and go on sightseeing flights. And most recently, I worked for Goodyear, like you saw in the video. And I worked for a company that was designing and building new airships. I was helping to fly them, and I was also the vice president of the flight operations team. So I got to lead a whole team of pilots, and we were doing flight testing. And that's one of the jobs I wanted to tell you about. Flight testing is when you're testing out new aircraft that are just built. And if you're interested in engineering and math, and based on that first poll that we did, or the second poll, it seems like there's a lot of people interested in science and math, and you like flying, you could look into a career being a flight test pilot or a flight test engineer. And that's not just for airships. There's flight test pilots and flight test engineers for helicopters and airplanes and all different types of aircraft. So the inside of the Snoopy blimp looks like this. So you can see there's much fewer instruments than you saw in the video, or that shows the cockpit of the aircraft. And if you notice where she has her hand on that wheel controls the elevator. So it kind of looks like you're sitting in an airplane. If you roll the wheel back, you go up, and if you roll it forward, you go down. And then there's pedals on the floor that you push to go left and right. Now, if we go to the next slide, you'll see how other airships have a joystick that they use. If you look at where my hand is, I'm holding a joystick, and that's what we can move to the rudder and elevator to steer the airship and go left or right or up and down. And then the next photo shows the cockpit, and you can see there's a lot more instruments and gauges in this cockpit. But I really like both the airships, the one that looks simpler and this one that looks more complex. They both have their own joys and their own challenges, and that all adds to the job. And I love them. I love both types of airships. Um, let's see. Oh, we're almost out of time. Maybe should we just go through the last couple of slides and I'll say what the pictures are?
Yeah, absolutely. We did have a question that's been in the chat for a
Oh,
little
sure.
while. What is
Answer.
the maximum speed of that an airship can fly, and how fast can an airship fly? So maybe what's your cruise speed, or what is
Mhm.
the speed that you can't go past? Do you want to talk
It
about that?
Sure, it varies by airship, by different airships, but usually we go about 30, some of the airships go about miles per hour, and some go closer, like about 50 or 55 miles per hour. So it depends on the airship. But that's the maximum speed, and the cruise speed is going to vary by depending on which one you're flying, just like airplanes. But that's normally where we are. Either the smaller ones go at about 35 miles per hour, or the bigger ones about 50 or 55 miles per hour.
And are there some weather conditions that make it so that it's hard to fly that day, or it's not safe to fly that day?
Yes, we watch the weather very closely. So before we take off, we look at the weather and we follow it all throughout our flight to make sure that nothing's changing that could be a problem for us. And if the weather doesn't look good for an airship, then we'll cancel and we won't fly that day because safety is always our number one priority.
Is there a wind that the airship cannot, like a that the airship can't sustain or something like that?
Yeah, a lot of airships for maximum wind usually don't fly more than about 25 miles per hour. But here's the thing, Annie, too, this is a good one, is that sometimes when the wind is light, it has a tendency to come from all different directions instead of one steady direction. And an airship is so big and so light that if the wind changes and hits it from the side, it's kind of like a big sail. It's such a large surface area, but it's so light that it can move the airship and blow it around. So sometimes we have to cancel, even if it's really light winds, if they're switching from all different directions.
Okay, interesting. So it's more about is it a steady wind from one direction or not?
Or is it gusting? Yes, and how high the gusts are, and if it's coming from different directions. Yeah, there's a lot of variables, and weather is one of the biggest things that we really focus on and always check and stay on top of. Yes. Was that the end of the questions there?
Yes, we're good on our questions.
Okay, wonderful. So, I'm running out of time, so I'll just talk through these last few pictures that we have. So I wanted to show you what it looks like when we're flying at night and as we're approaching a stadium to fly, this is in this case over a football field. And when we're over the stadium, you can actually hear the bands playing and the crowd cheering. And the next photo shows the excitement of being over a big event that has fireworks going off that you'll see from the airship, or you'll watch airplanes doing their flybys. So it's really exciting to be over the sporting events. Also at nighttime, some of the airships glow from the inside out. So they'll be illuminated on the inside. And this is a beautiful picture. It shows the moon in the background and an airship that is lit up from the inside. And the reason this is important is if a company had their name on the side of that, it would be advertising and people could still see the airship at night and it would be glowing. But one funny thing that sometimes happens is the air traffic controllers have told me before that people thought I was a UFO and that they had reports of UFOs, and really it was just me and the blimp. But this is a good picture that shows the whole structure of the blimp with battens at the nose that hold the shape of the nose and seams that run down the whole entire envelope or balloon part. Yep, because it is fabric, and so that it's sewn together in those seams. And I will just wrap up by telling you my favorite part of flying airships is when we transit. I love getting to see the views. You saw all those huge windows that surround the cockpit. And when we fly over the ocean, we see whales and dolphins and sea lions, and the mountains and the desert are so beautiful. I just love flying across the country and seeing all the beautiful scenes. I also like watching people that are just happy, and where I get to make their day and they're happy because they got to see the airship or fly in it or got a wave returned to them. And I wanted to end on just, if there's more questions, I'm happy to stay on and take them. But I wanted to end with one question for the girls too, is can you think of one way to make your dream come true? And the reason I say that is sometimes just one little thing that you can think of. I find so many people, both kids and adults, can list a whole list of reasons of why they can't make a dream come true or have something or achieve a goal. And like, well, I can't do that because of this, this, and this. And so I just wanted to leave everyone with, if you have a goal or a dream, whether it's big or small, try to think of what you can do to make it happen, even if it seems like there's a lot of things that would prevent it from happening. And you don't need to know the whole entire path to get there, but if you can think of just one small thing that would take you a step closer, once you do that, then another door will open, or you'll think of another thing and it'll keep going. And that's how you'll get to where you want to be.
I love that. And if you have one thing that you want, you can put it in our Q&A and I'd be happy to share it. So we have our last poll. Andrea thought of these things. These were her favorite parts of being an airship pilot, which she went over. Oh, I see what's coming in is the beautiful views of flying across the country, Andrea, 100%.
Oh,
But also, if you want to share that one dream, you can share it to Aviation for Girls at wai.org, and I'll be happy to send it to Andrea and Jennie. And maybe you can provide some feedback for that. So I don't see any other open questions. Before we go, we do have a scholarship opening for anybody that's interested in space camp or STEM or STEAM, and aviation. It's all really interconnected, as you notice in discussing supply chain and airship and sailing and all of the things. They actually all work together. So if any of our Aviation for Girls crew is age 16 to 18 and you are members with us, you can apply for the Endeavor Scholarship. And this gives you an opportunity to work as a team. You'll get to go to Washington, D.C., as well as Space Camp in Alabama. So all you have to do is send a 3-minute video of why going to Space Camp and that Endeavor Scholarship would impact your community and yourself. And you can scan that QR code and send the details. I wanted to thank Jennie and Andrea so much for being here. It has been a wonderful broadcast. I've learned a lot. I mean, this has been a really amazing event. Thank you so much for your time, for your expertise, for your words of wisdom. We do have future events. We will have our flight instructions and opportunities in March. And we have our February Aviation for Girls Connect news coming up next month. So stay tuned for that. I see no more questions. Andrea or Jennie, do you have anything else to wrap us up?
I just want to thank you for having me. It's been great, and getting to meet Andrea. We've both worked for Goodyear and we had to meet on this platform, but that's wonderful. And we have lots of blimp attire with our 100th birthday. The Goodyear store actually has blimp attire. So I did go buy my blimp shirt specifically for this activity, but there are sweatshirts and t-shirts and all kinds of fun blimp shirts. And I think we even have blimp hats probably. So if anybody's interested, I believe you can access the Goodyear store on the internet. I don't have the specific address, but there's a whole line of blimp clothing for our 100th birthday for the blimp this year.
I love it. Thank you so much, Jennie. And Andrea, any other last wrap ups except for finding one goal for our dream? I love that. I love that.
I don't think so. I'm wearing my Women in Aviation shirt for not a blimp shirt today, but lots of other aircraft on there. Thank you for having me. I encourage all the girls to continue learning, which Jennie spoke to when she was talking, and continue following your dreams. And thank you for having me.
Well, thank you both so much for being here. Amazing experts. I love featuring our role models, women in aviation. I hope you have a wonderful day.
I'd like
Evening.
to say happy 100th birthday to the Goodyear blimp.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.